So I've been following this Dutch guy or Belgian guy called Chris van Stenbergen, and he's been talking about the Blue Ocean event as well. And I've been slightly provoked or triggered by him because he says that at mid-July there probably will only be sea ice in the Arctic Basin that I'm talking about, and in the Canadian archipelago, and maybe in the Beaufort Sea. So yeah, that's his guess. He says probably. So that's sort of half acceptable, but you can see here that one of the biggest export areas where you export sea ice, also where the Arctic gets rid of its sea ice, it goes down this current here along the east coast of Greenland. And when the wind is blowing, like this week and last week, with cold weather in Northern Europe, then there is huge transport of ice down the Greenland coast, and that happens every year, every summer. So to suggest that there will be no sea ice down this east coast is kind of not that insightful, because why would that stop? It will always keep exporting ice down here, and it goes down here to melt, basically. So you wouldn't expect the Greenland Sea to go totally ice free in July, at least. And then you have this tweet that says it basically says that he puts a possible Blue Ocean event on the 15th of August and a sea ice-free Arctic on the 21st of September. So the last one of these is he says absolutely no sea ice, zero meters of sea ice in September, and he says Blue Ocean event limit of 1 million square kilometers by the 15th of August, which I don't think there's any reason to believe. He lists a few reasons, but it never happened before, so you would have to follow it very closely in order to predict it. And even then, me at least, I would only predict it for September, because it never happened before. So why would it happen in like July or August? And you can go over here, and it says Blue Ocean event or less than 1 million square kilometers of sea ice. It's the definition of Blue Ocean event. What's the chance of a Blue Ocean event? It says to have a Blue Ocean event of virtually no sea ice in July, 20%. That's a gross exaggeration, I would say. And to have it in August, 70%, and in September, 100%. I mean, just to list 100% chance of a Blue Ocean event in September is disingenuous, because all it takes is like a couple of cold weeks or something, then it doesn't happen. So it's definitely not 100%. We don't know. There's a lot of things we don't know, but we do know it's not 100%. So that just so disqualifies this tweeter instantly. And it lists a lot of areas where he thinks it's breaking up very fast, but that's just sort of name dropping. And here it says that 1 to 16 of these seas will probably be sea ice free before the 15th of July. That's like 7 days from now. I don't think so. There will be sea ice in most of them, although not very much. But even the Hudson will have sea ice. Hudson Bay will have sea ice on the 15th of July, just not very much, right? And this This narrow strait on the west coast of Greenland is also an export channel. So you will have ice being exported down here. Once the ice bridge goes here in the narrow strait and the Lincoln Sea. So you will expect to have sea ice down here as well as the east coast, the Greenland Sea and the Fram Strait between Svalbard and Greenland, as I said. So forgetting that just means that you haven't been following this for very long, because you see sea ice there every single summer, right? And then the last tweet here is he's gone up to 45% probability of a blue ocean event in July. I have no idea where he takes that from. And for August, 85%. It's like he has a comma error or something. Like it should be 10% for September and 8.5 for August and 4.5 for July, even though July is just impossible. It just can't happen in July, for pretty obvious reasons. So, but it's interesting to follow this guy and to wait for him to eat crow when his very, very eager predictions fall flat on their tummy in mid-July and then in August. So, a kind of opposite to this, you have this Zeke Housefather guy who writes for some big fancy newspaper or magazine in America. And he says to motivate climate action, we need to both acknowledge the gravity of the problem and paint a hopeful picture of what a prosperous, equitable, and just low-carbon future will look like. Doomism and defeatism are counterproductive. So there are several things to say about this. First of all, his aim, his goal is to motivate climate action, right? That's up here. And acknowledge the gravity of the problem, yes, absolutely. But I don't agree that we should paint a hopeful picture. Because that's sort of entering politics into it. You want to motivate climate action, so therefore you will paint a picture that is more beautiful than it really is in reality. And there's a lot to be said for just painting a truthful picture instead of something that looks easy to do or looks, exaggerate the chances of succeeding. Climate action, I think, would be a good idea in the 1960s or 70s. These days, not so much, because, middle-aged people standing in the street singing "Staying Alive." I don't know. It sort of just doesn't really change anything, does it? So, yeah, I totally agree that we shouldn't over-exaggerate the climate impact, like this van Stensbergen in the previous slide. It's not like all the ice is going to melt tomorrow or next week. And yeah, we can see from the other activity of this guy that he really, really wants some hardcore climate action or new policies or revolutions to start immediately. But I think, and therefore he's kind of exaggerating this development. But I think it doesn't, in the long run, it doesn't serve you any good to say everything will disappear, everything will melt like overnight, because the chicken will come home to roost, and people will see that, oh, this guy was just an alarmist who was exaggerating these things, and it takes a lot of time to melt all that stuff. And like for instance, the Greenland ice sheet on land is gonna take decades to melt, no matter how much warmer it gets. It's not like it can be gone by 2022 or something. Uh, yeah, so I'm not sure what he means by doomism and defeatism. I think science should be about making the best um, maps of where we are right now, and also the best predictions for how soon and how fast things will go. I don't think scientists ought to spend a lot of time thinking whether or not their science results, their findings, will motivate climate action or not, because we don't have any idea what kind of climate action would suffice at this point. It's like it's just decades too late to do anything, and I think if you look at the Paris Agreement, I think more clever people than me have already figured out that if every nation did everything they pledged in the Paris Agreement, we would still end up at 4 degrees warming or even more compared to pre-industrial, and that would basically send us down a slippery slope of warmer and warmer every decade until we reach 10 or 12 degrees warmer than pre-industrial. So I don't know what he means about with climate action. Uh, I would like to see that, and I'm sure his kid would like to see that. But I don't think we should lie to people or paint overly hopeful pictures about our chances of getting there at the cost of giving accurate scientific pictures of where we're at. Okay, bye.